We'll start with you, Kelsey. First of all, do you have any idea on that end what's happening with the police investigation? Have you heard that the victims are now really being heard, and maybe the Attorney General, is he saying anything more publicly?
I personally haven't heard anything. I kind of shut down my social media a little bit yesterday to step back and let the people that need to have their voices heard be heard. So hearing that from you is actually really encouraging to know. I'm glad that things are starting to move forward and the right steps are being taken with that.
I think that's why everybody wants this is accountability that churches, organizations, even businesses, whatever it is in life, that we never shut down the victims that want to speak. And Kelsey, you have been very vocal on social media talking about, as this has unfolded, your personal stories and your situation. And I'll open the floor to you first. We'd love to
Okay.
hear your story and what you've been through.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it concise. I started working at Faith Life Church late 2011. I was newly graduated from college at the time, and I was hired on to be one of their graphic designers and primary event photographers. So basically, with the marketing department, it was part of my responsibility to handle any of the product designs that you guys would see on the pastor's material, any sort of signage you would see for special events, all of the curriculums that the youth would have for their classes and stuff. I would help put those things together. So if it's been printed, if it's visual, I probably had my hands on it, and I know there's a team of people always working on that. With the photography side of things, what I would normally do is cover any and all events the church had. So if there was a special service, if the pastors were doing a taping for one of their shows, if the youth had any of their events going on or any church-wide program, I was there. And that was typically outside
Mm.
of my normal work hours. Um, so when I was hired
So
on,
a job on top of it, and then basically, was it volunteering or like a sort of a paid gig?
most of the events would be during work hours if it was like a weekend conference and whatnot. But if it was an after hours event, say for like the church or something, that wasn't paid. What they had at the time was a system where we would keep track of our extra hours, and there was a notebook with a binder that we would sign in as like our hourly check-in every day to and from. And if we kept track of those spare hours, that was used as rollover vacation time. So if I had anything outside of my 40 hours that wasn't paid overtime, that was used as extra vacation days. And
Mm.
that was really, really difficult when I was just out of college. I had a lot of debt. And so I was like, well, I kind of would like to see if I could get compensated for that. And at the time, being new, I just didn't feel it was my place to bring that up. Um, but about a year into it, I did ask, like, is there a way I can be compensated for that? And a couple times I was told that wasn't necessarily within the budget. And I kind of just pulled back on it.
Mm. And when you think about the budget, this is, from what I'm understanding, a really well-funded church.
Yeah,
Did that make sense to you that there was no budget?
no. And me being their photographer, I sometimes had to go back in the pastor's office and kind of stand back, like if they had a special guest in. So trying to take stock photography for things like that that they could use for marketing, and just seeing a lot of things behind the scenes. And I can't claim to know the budget on that, so like I can't speak to any of it. It just it felt hard to make sense of it. And I also didn't know if that was my place to question or who to question, because being a staffer in like a prosperity church like that, which I didn't even know what that was until I worked there. Um, I was like, oh, so maybe I have to kind of commit to this, and this is something I can work up to, and then eventually, the fruit of that labor will come forth.
It kind of makes me laugh, Kelsey, when I think about a prosperity church, but none of the employees ever prosper. You know, I mean, I don't know. You'd think that the part of the prosperity is giving, right? Wouldn't this be the church's
Yeah,
opportunity to bless? In any case, I mean, I don't know. I'm just hearing this from a few. It's been sort of the same complaint that I mean, we all have to eat, and if you're teaching prosperity, but uh, it doesn't seem to come to, a man is worth his his hours, right? A
hmm,
workman is worth his pay, is what the Bible has to say, and I think that applies to women too. So yeah,
yeah.
so that was a difficult thing for you. And what other kinds of things have you experienced?
Uh, Besides just the regular job hours, I was also expected to raise up any members in the church that were interested in photography or graphic design. Uh, and this is where I would partner with some of the youth. And I love teaching that stuff because I feel like the creative field is a very undervalued field. And there's so many ins and outs to it that I was eager to bring somebody on. Um, but trying to do that, where I was basically juggling two full-time jobs with the photography and graphic design and teaching, it was a lot. It was so much to
Mhm.
try to keep track of. And the first year I was there, we really didn't have a system on funneling project requests. And I was kind of left to figure it out because the person that I started working with, he ended up finding a better opportunity and left. So for a few months, it was literally just me and our copywriter.
Hmm.
And I had to try to coordinate with all the different department heads to say, okay, well, the kids ministry need these booklets printed at a certain time. This is the date the print vendor gave me that they need to have it by. But then the pastors would also need the materials for their products designed, as well as their quarterly magazine. And so, like, the different departments had different timelines on things, and I was trying to coordinate with them all. And if one had to get pushed aside, I would get flack for it. And people were just coming at me left and right, and I felt like I had no help as far as like organizing these projects. And I'll be honest, there were a couple times I felt so overwhelmed that I just locked myself in a bathroom stall and cried because I felt like such a failure.
Hmm.
And
Wow.
being told that like I didn't have a good work ethic because I was falling behind on projects that were out of my control, and just like begging to get help, someone to hire. And like,
Hmm.
again, this is where volunteers came in and like helped me a lot because I was able to train them up in simple things to help me cover. Um, but it was so much to keep track of. And in time, I was able to raise up some members in the church that were able to help me with photography and things like that. And it was wonderful to see them feel so empowered to do that. And some of the youth with the design stuff and getting excited to do more of that, like that was amazing. But the expectations I felt to provide all of this stuff and to meet demand, and I couldn't do it. And I felt like I wasn't being heard on getting help. Um, One of the hardest things that I had to deal with was about a year into my job, the fall of 2013. My mom was diagnosed with breast cancer, and a week after
Hmm.
that, so was my grandmother. My mom's case was pretty severe. Uh, she immediately had to basically go into surgery and start chemo. And this all happened within a span of 2 to 3 months, and it hit me really hard. And there was some good support early on, but with the demand of everything happening, the fact that I had to be at all of these events doing photography work, I lived about 45 minutes away. I felt like I couldn't be there for my own family because I was working at these events all the time. And if I asked to leave early or to do something with them, they were just kind of like, well, can you stay another hour? I was like, I can't. Like, there was not a single time I was able to go with either of them to get their chemo treatment. And I'm so thankful for the friends and family that we had that could go. But I couldn't for a whole year because I was at the church working or getting home really, really late. Like sometimes if the events and conferences went long enough, I had to stay there and catalog all the photography that I did. And there were a couple times I didn't get home until like 12 o'clock at night. And I live in a really rural area. So like I didn't exactly feel safe going home sometimes just because there was this constant pressure of demand. And it was expected of me to be available 24/7 to the pastors if they ever needed marketing material to review or slides for a service. And if I didn't have my phone and laptop on and I wasn't able to work within the hour, I would hear about it. And there was one weekend I went on a hiking trip in the southern part of Ohio where there's no phone signal. And that afternoon, I found out the pastor needed some slides for something. And then by that point, it was too late. I was like, I can't do anything. I'm sorry. Like, I'm too far out of town. When I came into work that following Monday, I was pulled aside by a senior staffer and basically reprimanded for the fact that I wasn't committed and I should always be available to get this stuff out because pastors have a lot going on and they need to be able to review stuff. And that was another one of those moments where I just like collapsed and like internally started to shut down. Because
Wow.
like I felt like I just could not keep up with everything that was happening. Um, and feeling like I had to choose to be available to what they needed
Hmm.
to my own family and friends. It's like if I didn't have a laptop or internet within 5 feet of me, I thought I was like, it just felt like a constant jump scare. And it was so hard. And I know my parents have never looked at me any different from not being able to be there as much as I wanted. Like they've assured me of that. But for me personally, as a conviction, it was just extremely difficult to be like, this church talks so much about putting family first. And when I asked for those times to step away, I felt like I couldn't get it. Like it almost felt
Wow.
shameful for me to ask.
Um, when I'm listening to this, it's really horrifying, but it's something that, so somebody wrote me today about YWAM and about that sort of a very strong, uh, you had to be committed. That's a word that they say, and then never complain and don't, out anyone, touching not the anointed, and just this culture of honoring who's ever at the top, no matter how much you couldn't even do it because you were out there. You say senior staffers, so would that be the Cassie family, or would this be other people that are trained? And like, why is everyone so mean? I really have to wonder. Like, churches can be so mean. And did you feel this pressure coming from the very top, or?
Yeah, it was definitely top down. There was in the different departments, whoever was in charge was either someone of the Kissy family or someone very closely associated with the Kissy family. So
Mm,
the best way I can describe it is the nucleus was the Kissys, and then outside of that was a close family group of other families that they had known for a long period of time. So when I came on, I didn't really know or understand any of this. I wasn't quite understanding of the structure, and I just kind of rolled with it for the most part. Um, I didn't think much of it at the time, to be honest.
mm-hmm. And were you ever working directly with Drenda at all, or in her purview of what she was doing?
The only time I was with them directly is if they had a special guest speaker in town and I was doing the photography with them, just candid photo ops, or if I needed stock photography for her products in her show or both of them together for their fixing the money thing. So that was the only time I was in close proximity with her.
Hmm. And Was she kind and like warm?
She gave that off initially. I'd say within the first year of me trying to get into the swing of things. But the big thing I really would pay attention to was how she would be treating the media team. Because anytime they had their recordings and things going on, I was mostly just a fly on the wall with a lot of stuff. And I want to pick my words carefully here. It was really hard feeling like I had to stand back and see a lot of things that made me wonder when I'm being told, ministry never rests. And senior staff and pastors are being told, like, take the time that you need to rest. But when I look at the media team, honestly, they should have just had cots to sleep there because they were there before I ever showed up and they were there long after I showed up and they worked their butts off. And watching some of these people also feel like they had to choose between their family events and getting this media and recording and stuff done for the pastors was gut wrenching to me. And they just looked so tired and broken. And I felt super helpless because I was right then with them in it, like trying to do my
Mm.
own stuff. And I want to say the pastors like would try to maybe show them some courtesy, but the demand and seeing how ragged they were just didn't really match that. I'm like, if you cared about your staff, why do they look so tired? Like
Mm.
that was a question I asked myself a lot.
What kind of media were they producing? It's a church, so I you go to church, you sing, you need the songs up on the
Hmm.
screen.
Yeah.
Maybe you need some creative announcements. What was
Hmm.
the media?
The media was typically church services like you would expect, but also anytime they broadcasted their conferences and special events, uh, anytime there was a guest speaker in town, all of their TV shows, and typically some of the kids' stuff, depending on what that was. So, like Fire and Ice, I think they would record some of that, but there was a lot.
What was Fire and Ice for us who don't
Fire
know?
and Ice, uh, Ben, could you explain that
Fire and
better than me?
Ice.
Because, yeah, okay.
Yeah, he
Cassie, go
can.
ahead.
Cassie, yeah.
Well, Fire and Ice was some sort of play that Tom Kissy wrote to be able to reach the youth. I've only seen it once. I went to a lot of different practices because I was working there late, but it was something that he produced, and a lot of parents now are speaking out against him because there's some sort of like love interest in it. But I don't know the full story because, again, like this was 12 years ago for me, and I've only seen it through once.
Okay. Fire and Ice. So is it a series or is like I showed something the other night on my podcast with
Mm.
fire, airplanes, and Drenda has a sword and she's killing the devil. I don't know. Is that Fire and Ice?
It's not that. No, it's not that. I can
No.
give a
Not that.
little more info on that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Yeah.
Fire
Go
and
ahead.
Ice was
Go ahead,
basic.
Ben.
It was basically like a youth alternative to a Halloween experience. It's always in October. It's good versus evil. It's this fantasy story. There is a love interest. And the reason that parents are speaking out about it now with all of the other news that is coming out is because, you know, Tom's age and the love interest in this fantasy world was always played by a minor female. So that is coming under scrutiny now that all of this stuff is out. But that is something that has gone on for years. And I actually think this past year is when some of this stuff started coming to light. And, I think Tom was asked to resign or he resigned on his own and was not meant to be part of this last one. Though I don't know if that actually occurred, but that is Fire and Ice. So it's basically like a Halloween alternative fantasy experience for youth.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it did have all
Okay.
the smoke and extravagance of what you were referring to a minute ago.
Right,
Yeah.
like a real theatrical presentation. I get it. So that's
Yeah.
sort of
Performance.
what you were
We love a
talking about,
performance-based
Kelsey.
experience.
Yeah.
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 Yes,
That's
yes,
basically it.
yeah. So, wow. Well, Kelsey, may the Lord honor you for what you did with the servant's heart in trying to really be invested in something that seems like the care wasn't there for your personal experience and for your family. That is very hard. Your mom getting cancer and then your grandmother, and also just feeling badly. Like I'm just thinking that, if somebody can't do it, you're just kind to them because you don't want them to feel bad. Didn't anybody care about making you feel so horrible? Like, because you're hiking, that's mean. So it's a mean
Yeah.
spirit.
Yeah. It felt like I just couldn't break the tether, so to speak. Like I
Hmm.
always had to feel connected to what was going on and being ready at a pin drop.
Right. And you used a couple phrases, and then I'm going to go to Cassie, and then we'll talk to Ben. But you used a couple phrases. Was this what they like, the commitment phrase, or you need to be here? Like you said some phrases as if that's sort of what they used all the time.
Yeah. Um, Kind of in passing a little bit, just being like,
Hmm.
we want to make sure you have a servant's heart and that you're focused on your
As
work.
if you didn't,
And
right? As if you didn't. You're such a servant,
I,
obviously.
I I was like, I don't know what else I could possibly do at this point. But
Oh
I was
man.
like, can I?
I'm
I'll
sorry to
take a
laugh,
tot
but it's
also.
right.
You did.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
God forbid you ask
a
to be
small.
fed, right? I don't know.
Well, as a small joke with that, I mean, Cassie remembers this was funny. For my lunch break, because it was so short and only for 30 minutes, I had a hammock. And the first time I had it, I was like, well, you know what? Maybe I could set it up in the two trees in the front of the church and take a quick nap during my lunch. That was not smart because so many people saw me wipe out and it became a joke for a while. But like that fun
Mm.
aside, like one of the few times I felt like I could get rest was on my lunch break, and I felt like I had to choose between going and taking a 30-minute power nap in my hammock behind the church somewhere or going and get food. Like
Mm.
that was most of my days just to feel like I could keep up with stuff.
Was it Tom Cassie who was sort of the overseer of this type of thing,
I, honestly,
or no?
I felt like I didn't really have an overseer. It was
Yeah.
it was different department heads for different things, and that's what was really tough for me is because
But
I
somebody made
had
you
one.
feel this pressure. So
Yes.
yeah. Was there more
Yeah.
challenging personalities, and maybe you don't want to say their name or whatever, but just
Yeah.
some people that just weren't sensitive, would you say?
Absolutely, yes. Without a doubt.
Absolutely. Hmm.
Yeah.
So that's been hard. Have you left the church
Yeah.
now, Kelsey?
When I signed out in 2014, um, I there was another moment that just like tipped me over, and I was like, I need to get out of here. My creativity felt like I was like a squeezed tube of toothpaste. Like I had nothing left, and I was like, I don't know what I could do. And at that point, I was like, I was honestly ready to walk away from my faith because I felt sucked dry. And
Oh.
I stayed as long as I did because I saw other people were struggling as much as me. And I was like, I want to be here for them, these volunteers that have given so much. And I finally left in the fall of 2014 and I was so broken. I was like, I decided to actually go overseas and do missions for an entire year. I just wanted to get out and leave and have nothing to do with it. And it actually took
Wow.
me another 4 years to do graphic design again. I worked different jobs just to feel like I could create on my own. And I didn't set foot in another church for another 6 years. And even now, I still have a really hard time like going consistently because it's like when you know what's happening in the background and you kind of learn to pay attention to all the people that are serving and working there, that's all you learn to see instead of like the message of what's happening.
Hmm. It sounds like the church is missing the point of what church is about. That's just so very sad.
I, if I could say anything, it'd be like I want people
Sure.
to ask themselves, are you going to church to be entertained? Like if that's why,
Mm,
then you need to check your heart. And if you want to know if a church is healthy, just stop for 5 minutes and look at the staff and volunteers. Like, do they look tired?
mm,
Like, are they there every day? Like, paying attention to
mm,
those little things and seeing those that are in the unseen, like, reveals a lot. And I know with a lot of things that are coming out and people are choosing to resign, um, I did see that some people had the idea of giving their tithe to staff that have decided to resign. I don't know the full scope of the details on that, but I just wanted to bring awareness to that. Like, if you're wondering how you can help anyone who's been stepping away, like maybe consider giving your tithe to them.
mm. That's an awesome idea. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
That's terrific. I mean, that's what it actually should be for, is, to keep everything functioning. It's not to get your coffers all full and make people wealthy, and that just some of the church has lost their way in this.
Hmm.
Wow. Thank you, Kelsey.
Thank you.
Have you shared the bulk of, yeah.
Yeah.
I bet we could sit here, and if I just dug and dug, you can probably come up with a lot of stories of what
Oh, yeah.
happened. So thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing
Thank you.
that. And I'm truly sad, actually. Um, I grew up in church. I understand some of what you're talking about.